I'm Lonnie Bird. I'm here to demonstrate the Amana tool Instile cabinet door making router bits. Amana tool offers one of the largest selections of industrial quality tooling available anywhere, including fine cutting saw blades, shaper cutters, and router bits. When making doors with plywood panels, the Instile and rail sets allow you to adjust the panel groove to fit today's undersized plywood. This eliminates the panel rattle associated with using plywood door panels. In fact, Amana makes a complete line of Instile router bits for making cabinet doors, including the popular Mission style, the straight with bevel, the bead, the concave convex, and the OG. And if you own a shaper, Amana also makes a shaper cutter door making set, number SC555, which adjusts for undersized plywood. In this video, I'll demonstrate the steps to making beautiful cabinet doors with Amana Instile router bits. All doors consist of a framework surrounding a panel. The vertical members of the framework are called stiles. The horizontal pieces, called rails, fit between the stiles. The inside edges of frame members are often shaped with a simple decorative profile, sometimes called a sticking. Where the sticking intersects in the corners, it fits a reverse profile called a cope. Today, many woodworkers prefer to use plywood for the panel rather than solid wood. Plywood is stable and it's also convenient. There's no need to mill the stock for the panel. Unfortunately, most plywood today is thinner than advertised. For example, 1/4 inch thick plywood is often as thin as 3/16. And the thin plywood creates a sloppy fit with most door making router bits. But the Amana Instile bits easily adjust to accommodate thin plywood. Let's go through the steps to adjusting the bits. Each of the Amana Instile bit sets adjusts for plywood as thin as 3/16 and as thick as 1/2 inch. Fine adjustments as small as 2/1000 of an inch can be made by adding or removing shims. Begin by locking the bit into the collet of the router. Next, remove the arbor nut along with the washers, the guide bearing, and the top cutter. Now add or remove shims in order to achieve the necessary fit. If you're working with 1/2 inch plywood, add the third cutter. Now add the second cutter. Remember to stagger the two cutters so that the teeth don't touch. Also, remember to orient the cutter so that it's positioned to face counterclockwise as it spins. Now replace the remaining parts, beginning with a washer, then the guide bearing, and the second washer, then the spacers, and finally the arbor nut. Then lock the arbor nut in place. And remember to add or remove shims from the mating bit. Whenever you're using power tools, it's important to follow a few safety precautions. I use eye protection as well as hearing protection. I also use push sticks and push blocks to distance my hands from the spinning bits. Large diameter bits, such as those used in this video, should only be used in a table-mounted router and never exceed the manufacturer's recommended RPM for any bit. I also use the fence. It provides a place for dust collection as well as a position for the guard. And always remember, feed the stock from right to left against the rotation of the spinning bit. When making doors, your best work begins with stock that's flat and true and square. I begin by flattening the stock on the jointer and then I plane it to thickness. Then I joint the edges square to the face and rip the stock to width. The final step is to cut the stock to length. To determine the length of the rail, I subtract the width of the stiles from the overall width of the door and then add the tenons. To determine the length of the stiles, I simply make them approximately 1 inch longer than the finished size of the door, and then after assembly I trim the excess flush with the rails. Begin by mounting the coping bit. Insert it fully into the collet and then back it out a 1/16 so that it doesn't bottom out. And then tighten the collet firmly. Now adjust the height of the bit so that it's centered on the stock thickness. Now position the fence so that it's tangent to the guide bearing. Make a measurement at each end of the fence to ensure that it's parallel to the miter gauge slot. To maximize stock support and increase safety, reduce the fence opening as much as possible. Attach a backing board to the miter gauge to eliminate tear out on the trailing edge of the stock. Now clamp the rail to the backing board and you're ready to make the cut. Now you're ready to cut the groove. Begin by locking the sticking bit into the router. Next, adjust the height of the bit to correspond with the tenon. Position the fence tangent to the guide bearing. Now position the guard in place and you're ready to make the cut. With the parts cut out, you're ready to assemble the door. Apply glue to all 4 corners, and you can even glue the plywood panel into the frame for greater strength. After the glue has dried, trim off the excess from the stiles and fit the door to the cabinet. Amana tool Instile door making router bits are the only ones that adjust for undersized plywood and totally eliminate panel routing.